In the heart of the Akan land, there lived a village called Nsonyameye. The people were kind and strong. They lived by rules made long ago by their fathers and mothers. One of these rules was about girls. A girl had to stay a virgin until she got married. If she was not a virgin, she was ashamed. In Nsonyameye, girls were tested before marriage. They were checked by old women to prove they were pure. If a girl failed the test, she could not marry. The people believed this rule made the gods happy. They thought it kept the land safe and their crops growing. But something strange began to happen. One by one, the girls in the village stopped being virgins before marriage. When this news reached the chief, Nana Kweku, he called all the elders. They sat in the palace under the big baobab tree. "Why is this happening?" the chief asked. "Why are our daughters no longer pure?" The elders shook their heads. "This is bad," one said. "It is a curse. The gods are angry." The chief priest, Nsonyameye, was called. He had long white hair and carried a staff made of gold. Nsonyameye said, "We must go to the sacred forest. The spirits must tell us the truth." That night, the priest, the chief, and 5 elders went deep into the forest. They walked past the talking river and climbed the hills of drums. There, they made a fire. They poured libation and sang songs of the ancestors. A strong wind blew. The fire turned blue. A voice spoke from the smoke. It was the voice of Nanaya, the first queen of the land. "You are crying for lost virgins," she said, "but you forget your own wrongs." The men looked at each other. "What wrongs?" "Great mother," asked the priest. Nanaya's voice was calm but strong. "Long ago, the men of this village forced young girls into acts they did not want. They said it was for the gods, but it was not." The chiefs gasped. "This is not in our history, because the history was written by those who did wrong." Nanaya answered, "The gods have waited for you to confess. You did not, so the women now break the rules to make the change." Then the fire died out. The forest became silent. The men returned to the village with heavy hearts. In the village, the women were no longer quiet. They marched to the palace. They sang songs of pain and truth. One young woman, Abena, stood in front. She raised her hand. "We will not be ashamed anymore," she said. "We are not your sacrifice." The crowd grew. More women joined. They held signs. Some cried. Some shouted. Some just stood, silent and strong. The elders tried to stop them. "You are breaking the law," they said. Abena shouted, "Then change the law." The chief came out of the palace. He saw the pain in the eyes of the women. He saw his own daughter standing with them. He said, "We must listen. We must learn. We must change." Some men were angry. They said, "Our traditions are dying." But the chief raised his hand. "A tradition that brings pain must die." That night, the elders met again. They talked for hours. They argued. They remembered the words of Nanaya. At sunrise, they made a new law. Virginity would no longer be a test of worth. They carved the law into a stone and placed it in the middle of the village. The people gathered around. The priest blessed the stone. The women sang songs of joy. From that day, no girl was tested. No girl was ashamed. Love was built on truth, not fear. Abna became a leader. She taught girls about their bodies and their power. The village changed. Boys and girls learned together. They grew with respect. The gods smiled. The crops grew again. The river sang happy songs. The chief grew old. Before he died, he called Abna. He gave her his staff. "You are the new leader," he said. Abna led with kindness. She listened. She remembered the past but walked into the future. The village of Nsonyameye became known as the place where truth was stronger than shame. Visitors came from far lands. They asked, "How did you change?" The people said, "We stopped lying. We started listening." The village built a new school. It was named after Nanaya. The children learned the true history. They learned about the women who stood up, the girls who said no, the elders who changed. Every year, they held a festival called the Day of Light. It was a day of dancing, truth, and thanks. Abna grew old. She watched the girls grow strong and free. Before she died, she said, "Let no girl feel shame. Let every girl know her worth." The people carved her words in gold. They told her story to every child. They sang her name with drums. Nsonyameye stayed strong. It grew in love. It lived in truth. And from that day, there were no more virgins in the village, but there was peace. Years passed, and the village of Nsonyameye grew brighter. People began to travel not just to trade, but to learn. They came to sit under the old baobab tree and hear stories from the elders who had lived through the change. A young boy named Kwejo loved listening to those stories. He would sit cross-legged beside his grandmother, eyes wide with wonder. Why were the girls tested? He once asked. His grandmother, Mami Efua, sighed because people thought control was better than care. But they were wrong. We learned that together. Kojo nodded. He wanted to grow up to be like Chief Abena, wise, kind, and brave. He watched how she listened, how she let even the quietest child speak without fear. One day, a new challenge came. A group of strangers arrived. They were from the city, and they brought machines and bright promises. "We want to build a road through your sacred forest," one man said. "It can bring cars, jobs, and money." But the sacred forest was where Nanaya had spoken, where truth had come alive in smoke and fire. The people gathered again, like they had years ago. The new council, full of women and men, sat in circles to decide. Some were tempted. "We need the money," they said. "Our children deserve more." But others remembered, "What good is money if it costs us our soul?" Abna asked. Though her hair was now silver, her voice was still strong. Kwajo stood up. "Let me show them the forest," he said. "Let them see with their hearts, not just their eyes." So the strangers followed Kwajo into the trees. He showed them the hills of drums, the talking river, and the five circle where the pastor whispered. At the river bank, an old woman in the group began to cry. "I was told this was a simple village," she said, "but it's full of spirits, of truth." When they returned, the strangers said, "We will build a road elsewhere. We will honor what you protect." And so the sacred forest stayed safe. The people danced under the moon. Kwajo was lifted on shoulders, hailed as the little leader. Abna smiled. "The future is bright," she whispered. "It is full of children who remember." More festivals were born, not just the Day of Light, but the Day of Fire, the Day of Truth, and the Day of Abena. These were not just days to eat and dance, but days to tell stories, to confess, to heal. And with each story told, more wounds closed. The village, once bound by fear, now breathed in freedom. One evening, under the stars, Abena sat by the fire with Kojo. She took his hand and placed it in a small gold ring. "This was Nanaye's," she said. Kojo's eyes widened. "I will protect it," he said, "and all it stands for." Abena nodded. "Then you will never walk alone. The spirits walk with those who walk in truth." Kojo kept the ring close to his heart. As he grew, so did his dreams, not just for himself, but for all of Nsonyameye. The village had found peace, but peace was not silence. It was the sound of many voices, rising in songs, in questions, in courage. And so the story of Nsonyameye went on, not as a legend of lost virgins, but as a living flame of truth.